What's up, sisters? Welcome back to For My Sisters with Delle podcast. And I am coming to you today to talk about feeling a little jealous. Perhaps you're the jealous friend. But before we dive in, I want to remind you guys to check out the show notes or the description box if you're watching on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel or subscribe or follow the podcast on whatever channel of choice you prefer to listen to this or watch it. So the YouTube channel is Daily Delle, and then we are available on all streaming platforms. Also, you can check out my storefront, royaltyandrighteousness.com, for all of your Christian apparel needs. And if you happen to be a Christian single woman and you're looking for a community of women to fellowship with, do events with, to grow and self-development and all of that with women all around the world, then check out my organization, Single and Saved in the City. Just go on Instagram at Single Saved in the City, or Facebook, join our private Facebook group at Single and Saved in the City. You'll see it's like a purple icon in the circle. So let's go ahead and dive into today's topic. I got to give props to my sis, Maya. What's up, sis? How you doing? But this topic that actually stemmed from a conversation that we were having literally yesterday into this morning when I'm taping this podcast. And so it's an interesting conversation because it's real. You know, we were talking about jealousy in female friendships, and I'm going to keep it 110% with you guys because that's what I'm here for. I have definitely been the jealous friend. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just say that jealousy and envy are two different things. So envy is like jealousy on steroids. You know, envy is when you get to the point where you don't want to see somebody succeed, when you don't want to, celebrate them. And maybe it's because you literally can't bring yourself to do it because you really are that upset. You really are feeling that type of way. And you're like, you know what? I just don't have it in me. Jealousy is a seed that grows into envy. And so if you don't monitor jealousy, it can very much start to become a stronghold in your life, and that's when you start to become envious of people. But in our conversation, we were specifically talking about when women in female friendships start to get jealous of the friend that's in a relationship. So my friend Maya perpetually has been in, for the most part, relationships. Like, she's had single seasons and stuff like that, but for the most part, she's been the friend that's been, cuffed, that's been, with someone. I'm the opposite. I've actually, for most of my life, been the friend that is perpetually single. I'll have long-term relationships that will last like anywhere from a year to like 2.5, 3 years. Then I'll be single for a long time. So I haven't had a lot of relationships. I can count on less than 5 fingers the long-term relationships I've had. And I had a close call, like I said, the last episode that I'll tell you guys about, that I thought was my husband or whatever. And so, we were just sharing experiences and, how she's had experiences with a friend telling her that, I'm jealous of you because you have a man, or you're married, or you have a daughter, you have this, you have that, and I'm feeling some type of way. And don't get me wrong, jealousy can definitely seep into different areas. So it's not necessarily that you're feeling jealous of your friend because they are in a relationship and you're not. You might be feeling jealous or feeling some type of way. Maybe you're not even sure if it's jealousy, but you're like, I just know that I have these feelings of confliction in me where it's like, I'm happy for them, but I also feel some type of way because it's like, I'm watching them get what I want. But I'm here to tell you that that is the beginning of jealousy. Now, I know we hear that word and it scares us, but I'm going to break it down further for you as I'm just kind of flowing with you right now in this podcast episode, because this conversation was so good between us. I'm like, I got to share it with my sisters on the podcast, And so needless to say, we were talking about it and she was just sharing like how it feels to be on the receiving end of someone saying like, I'm jealous of you. You have the life I have. And she just didn't get it because she's like, I've never been that type. Like, I've never been jealous of someone for what they had or anything like that. And so I was just breaking it down because I can relate from both ends, more so experiencing the jealousy towards someone else. But I did have a season in my life when I was with my ex-fiance, and in the beginning of our relationship, everything looked great. We were living together. I had my government job, making good money. Okay, your girl was paid. Okay, them racks is looking good, but I was paid. I had my own place. We were living together. We had the cars. We were in premarital counseling. Like, everything was like going smooth. And he was a dedicated man. I'll give him that. I never had to worry about whether he truly loved me or whether he had wandering eyes or anything like that. We had one misunderstanding when we first started talking. And after that, it's like, I knew that he only had eyes for me. I never had to worry. Lots of trust, lots of communication with us. podcast. He was really my best friend, you know? And so from the outside looking in, it was like everything was perfect. Everything was great. It's like, man, she has the life, you know? And at that point in my life, I was the friend that was doing the best in my circle of friends. I never used to boast about it and be like, oh, I'm getting paid more than the rest of you. Y'all ain't on my level. Talk to me nice. You know, I didn't have that kind of energy, but it's just, you know, it was what it was. And so I remember a few of my friends at the time telling me like, man, like, you know, they didn't say the words I'm jealous of you, but it was like, yeah, like, you know, you kind of have the perfect life. Like, you know, I could tell they felt some type of way, you know, they felt some type of way, and they were honest that they did feel some type of way, even though they didn't say the words I'm jealous of you, but we understood. Like, you know, it didn't have to be explained because we understood. And so I do remember how I felt at that time, because like, man, like, you know, I'm going through so much, because that relationship had a lot of obstacles and it just wasn't the right relationship for me, especially at that season in my life. There was a lot that I was sweeping under the rug, a lot that I was settling for. Nothing too detrimental, but just again, like things that were, for lack of better terms, beneath me. And so when I shared that with my friends at the time, they understood where I was coming from. And it was like, oh, wow. Like, you know, sometimes we just don't know, you know, and that's another reason why I'm so transparent in my content, in my conversations and stuff, because we really like having the full picture really does help. And for me, I'm an open book. I don't mind sharing majority of things about my life. Honestly, I was telling Maya too, I was like, my podcast, my YouTube channel, all this stuff is therapeutic for me. So I'm a little bit more transparent than the average person would care to be. But this is kind of like my therapy, you know? So I don't mind. I don't mind sharing, because it's just like, you know, by me sharing, I get it off my chest. I encourage someone else. I help someone else, you know, I inspire someone else, whatever. But I help them realize like the reality, the dichotomy of life, that you can really have like a great thing going on over here, and then you could really have like some terrible things going on over there. But in all of it, we put our faith and our trust in Jesus. And so, you know, Maya, like I said, was saying that she just doesn't understand the jealousy. I was breaking it down, and I told her that jealousy can look different ways. You know, a lot of times when we hear the word jealous, we think like that's that friend that's hating, that's that friend that doesn't want to see you win. And that's when it becomes, like I said, more of an envy thing, and when there is like some sort of desire to see demise behind it. And that's when it becomes a stronghold. And that's why you have to nip these things in the bud when they're starting to be planted, when they're starting to take, you know, root in your life. When you feel the twinges of jealousy, when you feel those things, you nip that in the bud, you know, because spiritual warfare starts in our mind. The enemy wants to capture our thoughts, you know, so he wants us to get those feelings of negativity, those things that God does not want for us. He wants us to feel envious of people. He wants us to be hateful towards people. He wants us to lack peace and joy. And there's no way that you can be experiencing jealousy and truly have peace and joy. So, you know, it starts with your thoughts and your mindset and things like that. And so you have to take those thoughts captive. But I was like, jealousy can look, it doesn't always look like I don't want to see you win in that sense. You know, it might look that way to you, but what it really is saying is I am having some self-pity right now. I'm struggling with comparison. I'm struggling with feeling forgotten by God. You know, it could look like that. Maybe you're seeing people around you living the dreams that you want, and you're like, God, like, where is it at for me? Because it's easy to say keep the faith when it's still fresh, when that wound is still fresh. But when you've been praying and faithing and toiling and tithing and believing and speaking and doing all of the things for the last few months, sometimes years, sometimes decades, and you see other people getting what you've been praying for, and you're like, okay, I could see if I was out here just like raggedy, you know, like I wasn't doing the work, I wasn't self-aware, I wasn't putting my faith in Christ and all that. You would be like, okay, I could see it. But when you put your faith in Christ and it's still not panning out, and you are doing the self-work and it's still not panning out, and you've been clapping for other people, you're like, dang, like I would love for my ship to come in. I would love to clap for myself, you know, I would love to be on the receiving end of those applause. It starts to get real. So sometimes it's looking like self-pity in the sense of, you know, wow, like I really would like my shit to come in. I really like my life is nowhere where I would want it to be. I'm not as blessed as I thought. You know, sometimes jealousy comes off as arrogance, where you start to belittle the successes of other people. You start to belittle their accomplishments, because for you, elevating yourself and like highlighting their flaws or their shortcomings and elevating yourself makes you feel good, because it's like, well, they might have accomplished this or that, but they're not like me in this area, or at least, I don't deal with this or that, or at least my child doesn't do this, or at least my spouse or whoever doesn't do that, depending on what you're jealous of. And so it can look like that. And actually, self-pity and arrogance are two opposite sides of the same coin. They're both centered around you, but one is an extremely elevated view of self that's unhealthy, and one is an extremely, diminished view of self that's very unhealthy. Either way, they're both rooted in self-centeredness and self-absorption, and they're not healthy. It's not something that God wants for you. So, a lot of times we only talk about the arrogant side, but if you have a pattern of self-pity, that's something that needs to be checked too, because it's still rooted in self. And you have to check why it's so about you in your mind. And I get it. We're human. Like, everything's about us because we're human, but you have to check, like, why am I diminishing myself so much? Why do I have such a diminished view of myself? Like, let me get to the root of this. So just wanted to say that. But needless to say, I wanted to just share a couple of my thoughts around being the jealous friend and stuff. So like I said, sometimes it's rooted in self-pity. And if it's rooted in self-pity, which I've been there, you have to stop and ask yourself, why do I have self-pity? So why do I have this diminished view of myself? But then once you realize that, what can I do to change this? So for instance, for me, like I said, a lot of the time growing up, I was the perpetually single friend. I always had people telling me, you're so beautiful, you're so smart, you're so amazing, you're a wife, you're wifey material. Men and women would tell me that, friends and lovers. But it's like none of my lovers took me seriously enough to wife me up, because your girl still sitting here without a ring, And so it was just one of those things where it's like, dang, like, I'm so amazing, I'm so great, but no one is doing, like, no man sees my worth to make me his woman. And the one guy that did, that went down in shambles. Like, it didn't even last, and for good reason, like I said. But at the time, it's just like, man, like, that didn't even last. That was like the closest I got to the altar with the engagement. So you have to pinpoint what are the areas in your life that are making you have this heightened view of self-pity. And once you pinpoint it, why do you have self-pity? I realized for me, my self-pity was rooted in the fact that I had never had like these romantic relationships that my friends have had. And I've always been best friends to women that just got the juice. They just pull. It's like, whenever we go out, I might get some glances. Some guys might try to holler at me, but I mean, they have a swarm. They have an army of men coming towards them to talk to them. When we were in school, I'm going to the dance with my friends, my other friends that don't have dates, and they all got a date, and their dates picking them up, got a limo for them, got them jewelry, just the works. Like, we're in high school and he already balling out on like that on you, sis. Like, I'm sitting here trying to figure out whether we gonna go out to eat after the dance, or we're gonna go back to my place and eat whatever my parents cook and hang out. Like, I was always kind of like that girl that it's like, had a lot of friends, a lot of people actually genuinely enjoy being around me. But when it came to romantic relationships, I got the male gaze, but it was like always fizzling out. Like, it was always something that kept them from like taking it to that next level. And even up until recently, there's this guy I was dating, like, we were actively pursuing a relationship from 2021 all the way to like, I would say like September of last year. And there were moments where I didn't talk to him anymore. And I was like, I'm tired of talking to you. Like, you're not taking me seriously and stuff, but he would always come back. And we just the other day were joking about that because we're friends now. And I was like, one thing about you is you're going to come back around. And he's like, yeah, like, so we were laughing about that. And I was like, and then I'll always be like, hey, what's up? Or whatever. But even him, it was like, man, like, you're so great. You're such a wife. You're so this, you're so that. But it's like, it's always a but. And it's like, why is that but there? And so it's natural for you to lean to self-pity, because now, like we always say, obviously, if something keeps happening in your life, then you're the problem because you're the common denominator. We always say that when it comes to scenarios. And so when it comes to dating, it's easy to think that way, even though people might say, don't think that way, it's not you. But it's like, I can't help but to think it is me because I am the common denominator. So it only makes sense, So that's one way that jealousy can look. Self-pity, so if you're experiencing a lot of self-pity right now and you're feeling like, man, woe is me, my ship's not going to come in, no one's ever going to love me, no one's ever going to do this, that, and you find yourself kind of like speaking negatively about yourself and viewing yourself in a very low manner, or like the outcomes of your life in a low manner, then you could be very well experiencing the beginning stages of jealousy. Another way that you can tell if you are experiencing jealousy is that arrogance that I talked about. So, do you find yourself finding ways to diminish the accomplishments of the women in your circle or the women in your life or whatever? You know, like someone tells you good news and you congratulate them, but then maybe you go and talk to another friend and you're like, oh, well, they got this or they accomplished that, but they're not doing this like me, or oh, that's not even all of that. Like, you know, like you find little ways to kind of do a jab or make a dig. Like if you find yourself doing that, you might be going through the beginning stages of jealousy. You know, if you find it hard to celebrate for your friends, maybe it's really a wrestle because you know I've been there where I said congrats to my friends and then I still was battling internally. You know, all of that is the beginning of jealousy. Those are the seeds of jealousy taking root in your life. I know, for instance, what my ex best friend, because we don't talk anymore, but you know, we used to be in this business together, and I'm not going to say the business name, but it was a network marketing company. And every week we used to go to the team meetings with our upline and eat and have a good time, look at the jewelry, share business strategies, and so on and so forth. Well, at this time, she was still not like all the way a newlywed, but the marriage was still fresh. Like it was still fun. It was still like, I'm a wife, my husband this, my husband that. Like she was my husbanding us to death. Okay. Like everything was my husband, my husband, my husband. And we knew his name. We knew what he looked like, but it was like my husband, my husband. Like anytime she could show the ring, anytime she could say my husband, sis did not miss an opportunity, you know? And so my other best friend that I still talk to at the time, she was kind of going through it in a relationship. Like she was in a relationship, but it wasn't giving what it needed to give. And I feel like deep down inside she knew it, but she was settling. And we've had these conversations. So that's why I could be upfront, you know, and so transparent. And so this one particular meeting we went to, my best friend I don't talk to anymore, she was just going in. I mean, it was my husband this, my husband that, my husband this, my husband that. And my other best friend that I still talk to was just, I forgot exactly what the other best friend said, but she was like, must be nice. You know, like that was her response, must be nice. And so I was like, dang, like she's just not here for it tonight. She ain't with it at all. She sis is tired. Okay. She's not even tired. She's tired. And so I was just like, man, but I felt her because I was kind of in that moment myself. Because at this time, I was with my son's father. That was a rebound relationship after my failed engagement that I had no business being in. Don't recommend it. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. But I had my beautiful son out of it. So it wasn't all for nothing. You know, everything happens for a reason. But I was kind of conflicted. I was in this stage in my life where I really did feel like marriage is probably not going to ever happen for me, and I'm probably never going to have children. And I actually wrote that in my journal at the time that I have on my desk here. If I had time, I would like literally read the journal entry, like find it and read it. But I literally, at the end of 2015, my last journal entry said something to the effect of like, God, well, I guess you just don't have marriage for me and I'm never going to have kids. So take away this desire from my heart because I don't want to desire something if you don't have it in your will for me. Like, that's just cruel, you know, like that's just cruel. Like, don't give me the desire. And you know, good and well, you're not going, you know, bless me with these things that I desire. So just take it away so I can carry on with my life and keep it moving. And little did I know that 2.5 months after I wrote that journal entry where I really thought I would never have children and never get married, I was pregnant with my son. Now, the circumstances around it were not savory. Okay. I would not recommend, again, going through a toxic relationship that leads to a toxic pregnancy and things like that. I would not recommend it. But I did experience, you know, pregnancy, and now I'm experiencing motherhood. And just 2.5 months prior to that, I thought I would never experience it. So it's like, let that be a lesson to someone out there and a word of encouragement that you never know how close your blessing is. Like sometimes we feel like it's just so far off, like, oh my gosh, like I'll never experience it. It's never going to happen. And it can literally be happening for you tonight. It could literally happen for you tomorrow, next week, next month. Like you just don't know. So really take every day as the gift that it is. But back to the story, y'all. And I'm gonna go ahead and apologize because I didn't say this in the first episode. I do tend to go on tangents. I don't always write down notes. If it's something super important, I do to stay on task. But I like to tell stories. I like to talk. So if I go on a tangent and I happen to miss the point, just leave like a review or DM me or something to be like, yeah, like, can you finish the point you were making in episode such and such or whatever? Like, you know, just remind me because your girl I could really go off the rails in conversation and just be like, whoo, like, you know, we're now all the way over here, off the train tracks. But we left that business meeting after my best friend said, must be nice. And the best friend I don't talk to anymore, I should have given them code names, but it's all good. The best friend I don't talk to anymore was like, man, like such and such was really like in her feelings. Like she was kind of snippy and stuff. And I was like, I mean, I get it, rightfully so, because I just couldn't hold back anymore. I was like, might as well just go ahead and say it. Because I pride myself on keeping it real and being honest, even if the honesty isn't necessarily the best thing to hear in that moment. But I'm always tactful and respectful, because some people, they're just disrespectful. They're like, well, I keep it real. No, you keep it real disrespectful. Like you don't have to be rude. Like don't use bluntness as an excuse to be rude and act like you have no home training. Like, say it with diplomacy, with tact, with a good sense of communication skills. Let's act like you've been raised, like let's do your parents proud. But anyways, I was like, rightfully so, I get it. I understand why she was snippy and this and that. And, long story short, I ended up telling that best friend at the time that I was also jealous of her. I was like, she might be feeling jealous of you. To be honest, I'm feeling jealous of you because you have the marriage, you have the child, you have the house, you have the car, like everything's just working out for you. And these are things I prayed for years. You have this godly husband and stuff and this and that and the third. And, lo and behold, I didn't know that all hell was breaking loose in their marriage and in their household. She took that time to tell me some things. And then a few months later, she told me some more things and really just laid it all on the table. But that was a sobering moment because it taught me, one, you never know what people are going through behind the scenes, and with social media today and people just showing their highlight reels and stuff like that, it's very easy to look and compare and say like, dang, like they got the life, they got the house, they got the job, they got the man, they got the this, the that, the third, and so you're looking at your life and you're picking it apart, but you live in your reality every day. You're not in those people's realities. So when the camera shut off, you don't know what their marriage looks like. You don't know what their relationship looks like. You don't know what their parenting styles, their parent-child relationships look like, their job, their business, none of that, their spiritual walk. You don't know any of it. All you can do is just take them at their word and keep them in prayer for the best. That's all that you can do, and keep your mind focused on the things of the Lord, But it taught me that you really just do not know. We hear it all the time, but you honestly don't. Like all that glitters is not gold. It also taught me that it's easy to be discontented with your own life because yes, I wasn't married at the time, but I had a lot of things to be grateful for. That 2015 was the year that I left the government and started my self-employed entrepreneurial journey. And so I've been self-employed and an entrepreneur for the last 8 years. Has it always been rainbows and butterflies? No, I've taken a lot of losses. I've had to start over several times, but I can say that I've sustained myself, especially with the assistance of my support system, my family. They pour into my businesses, they support me, they keep me in prayer, and my close friends and stuff too. So, it's been more good than bad, but it taught me that it's easy to look at someone else's grass and not at your own. The grass always looks green on the other side. And it also taught me that authenticity is key. Like I said, like I feel like if people shared more, again, you don't have to put all your business on Front Street, but if you shared more, you kept it real, and you're like, you know what? This is a pain point in our marriage, like something that you don't mind sharing. This is a pain point, and just use it to encourage, because like the Bible says, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Like, when you share your truth, when you share your testimony, it's not only therapeutic for you, because I can speak firsthand to that. It's very therapeutic because you don't carry that weight around. It's like, no one could ever embarrass me or keep me in bondage with anything that I've done in life or anything that I said, because I'm the first to say that I did it or said it, and I live my life very transparently. So there's nothing that you could hold over me to make me feel bad, because I'm an open book, but it really is therapeutic. It really does release you from potential bondage, but it also encourages someone and it helps them overcome and realize, you know what? Marriage isn't a cakewalk. Like, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort that you have to put into it. It takes a lot of sacrifice, and it also taught me too that a lot of times people endure or settle for things or do things that you're not willing to endure, settle for, or do to achieve something. So one thing my parents always told me when we were growing up is like, don't envy people, because you never know what they did to get what they have, and you never know what they're doing to keep what they have. And to be quite frank, there are some things that women do to keep a relationship that I'm just not built for that. Like, that's not my ministry. So it's like, yeah, I can sit here and be jealous and be like, man, like I feel some type of way. But I have to always check myself and remind myself how blessed I am, And another thing I wanted to say too, if you are the jealous friend, to just encourage you is like, be honest with your friends about that. Now, hopefully your friends can take the honesty. Okay. So I would always say pray first before you just tell them, I'm jealous of you, because not everyone can take that. And a lot of people try to paint you out to be this big bad wolf when you say things like that. Like, you know what? I really am jealous right now. Like, I'm feeling some type of way. And it's because of XYZ. It's because I've been praying for this thing for so long. And I feel like God keeps overlooking me and blessing everyone around me. And people be like, well, if God is blessing people around you, that means that that blessing is right down the street from you. And the reality is that's not always the case. And that's what hurts. You know, we sell a lot of people a dream when it comes to God blessing them. And we try to speak for God when we don't know. And so I try my best, and I might stumble on this and I might fall. You know, I might fail in this area from time to time. So please have some grace for me. But I try to work very diligently to not speak for God, in the sense of like, that blessing is definitely going to come for you soon. Like, once you see everyone around you getting blessed in that area, it's definitely going to come for you soon. Or once, you know, you endure the night for so many nights, then the morning's going to come at this time. Like, I don't know. That's the reality of it. I don't know. You don't know. But that's why we put our faith in Jesus, because ultimately he's the one that holds our future in his hands. And I will never understand why he places and allows some desires to be on our heart and he doesn't give it to us. There's women that I know that have desired marriage their whole life and are still not married, and they're older. They're in their 50s, 60s and still not married. And so it's like they've had to learn to come to grips with the fact that maybe it's really not in the cards for me. Like, maybe God really just doesn't have that for me. And that can be tough. You know, I have to say recently, I kind of came to that conclusion for myself, where it's like, God just had it for me to be married later in life if I'm to be married. But if I were to never be married, then God is still good. And that is a hard pill to swallow, you know, and those are the type of thoughts that can, or realities that can lead you to feeling jealous. Because it's like, well, dang, like, how come you wouldn't have it for me, but you would have it for her? And especially when it's a friend or a family member that, like, you know their business, and you know, like, you know, some of them legit just might not be in the space to be a good partner or a good spouse. And you're like, but you're going to bless her with a husband, God? Really? Like, you know, and I've been sitting here serving you and faithing and toiling and all that, and you're not going to bless me with a husband? Like, make it make sense, you know? But it's a tough reality, but you don't have to go through that reality alone. And don't bottle up those feelings, because the devil wants for us to isolate ourselves. He wants for us to not speak truth to power. He wants for us to start to believe his lies and not believe the truth that God says about us. So when you let that planted seed of jealousy fester, it grows into envy, because envy is like grown up jealousy. And then what ends up happening is now you're acting funny to a friend or a family member. Now you're acting like a hater. You know, now you're like not wishing them well. Now when you don't say congrats, you truly are like, you know, like thinking of the negative instead of maybe saying congrats, and you're still conflicted, where it's like, I'm happy for you, but I feel some type of way. You know, I feel like that's when it's still able to be captured and be like, you know what, this isn't good. And it's natural to feel conflicted, especially when it's an area that you've really wanted success in, you know, or you really wanted a result in. But that's what the enemy wants. And then he wants you to isolate yourself so that you don't have healthy community and you're surrounded by misery, because misery loves company and stuff. And so now you start to speak those lies over yourself. Now you start to believe the lies. Now you start to feel like you're not good enough. Now you start to feel like, dang, it is my fault. That's why I don't have a man, or, you know, and I'm not saying don't take accountability. Like, if there is something that you know you need to work on, then work on it. I'm not saying try to act like you don't have to ever improve or change or anything, you know, about yourself. Like, take the accountability, be responsible, be self-aware, self-reflect. But what I'm saying is, don't come into agreement with the enemy and start being like, oh yeah, I'm not like, who's going to want to be with me? You know, like, I'm not as good as her because she got a man in such and such amount of time and I didn't. Like, because I've been single so long, clearly something's wrong with me. You know, like, don't do that, because at the end of the day, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are more precious than rubies. You are the head and not the tail. You know, you were formed and knitted in your mother's womb. You know, you can have infinite joy and peace in the Lord. You can only find that in the Lord, but you have to seek his face first. And you have to also understand that, like I said, spiritual warfare starts in the mind. So when you're coming into agreement with those thoughts, your thoughts become your beliefs, it becomes your mindset, and you start to act on those things. So now you feel like you're not enough, and now you're settling for any old body that gives you attention. Any man that you know shouldn't have even gotten past a hello. Now you're bending over backwards to impress him, to prove to him, like, see, I'm worthy, I'm worthy. You should be with me. Look at me, look at me, look at me. Like, no, you need to be confident, because the reality is, especially nowadays in the dating world, there are great men out there, but there are a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing, and they could sniff out a weak soul from a mile away, because it's the spirit behind these people. They could sniff that stuff out. They know, like, yeah, you walk around here talking about you bossed up and you that chick and all that, but he knows you don't really mean that. Like, men know who they could play with and who they can't play with. And so that's why you have to take those thoughts captive, and you have to really get to the root of it and understand too that, like, whatever you might have been force fed as a young girl, or whether it was overt or covert, because a lot of the messaging is not flat out, you're not good enough because you're not a wife. A lot of it is like subliminal. It's the things we say, it's the attitude and the posture we take around single women, saying things like, oh, she can't even keep a man. Like, she clearly ain't, something's wrong with her. She ain't worthy. It's like, she ain't a prize like that because she ain't got no man on her arm. So, linking a woman's worth to her relationship status and stuff. We're all guilty of it at one point or another, and saying those little side comments and slick statements and stuff. So we have to catch ourselves too as a community. But, we also have to not come into agreement with those things and kind of get to the root of it, so that we can, like, not act out on it, where it's not internalized. So you're not like, man, like, something must be wrong with me because I'm such and such age and I'm still single, So getting to the root of it, getting into therapy, like I was saying, having the open conversation with your friends, seeking God's face first and foremost, so he can speak through you, he can guide you, he can lead you, and leaning on him. Because if you're able to talk it out and you're able to speak it out with your friends, they might be able to really understand where you're coming from, and you might be able to understand where they're coming from, and it can be a healing moment, so with Maya, I'll give her that. She's very, very empathetic. She's going to hear where you're coming from and put herself in your shoes and stuff. So whenever we have this type of dialogue, it's very eye-opening, because it's like, wow, like, I didn't see it from that perspective. And wow, I didn't know you felt that type of way, because when she was telling me, what she was telling me is, like, when people would tell her that, she would feel almost bad, like, well, why are you jealous of me? Because my life is nothing to be jealous of. This isn't something that I, like, necessarily ask for per se. Like, it's something you desire, but it's not like, you did it to flaunt in front of people or to make people feel some type of way or anything like that. And then she grieves for her single friends, because she's like, I want my single friends to be in love. I want my single friends to experience true love, happiness, joy. I want them to have the life that they desire. And when they don't have it, it hurts me, And so I didn't really know all of that, but I know that she's also such a special woman, because honestly, I had told some of my friends in the past, and they were like, girl, bye. Like, you need to get over it. Like, it's not even that deep. And that's not a good place to be in either, when your feelings are diminished. So, all of that to say, because I feel like I was kind of rambling. I was just flowing today. If you are experiencing jealousy, one, I want to tell you, you're not alone. I also want to tell you to watch your eye gates and your ear gates, monitor how much information you're taking in. And let me just say this, there's nothing wrong with muting somebody. Okay. If you need to mute a page for a moment to get your mind right, then do what you have to do for your own mental health, because I'm so tired of people being like, oh, you should be able to clap for people and not mute. If you mute, you're a hater. Something's wrong with you. Like, let me do what I got to do for my health. Let me monitor my own mental health. Let's chill with all of that. Like, we don't need all that angst, stop forcing people to clap for you. Sometimes it's not even about you. It's like, I just need to monitor me. Like, let me get myself together right now. Like, I'm clapping for you from afar, like, I might not be bigging you up on my Facebook or my Instagram, but I'm clapping for you. I don't want to see you fail. I just need to monitor how much I'm taking in, because I know what it feels like to go through the anxiety attack feeling like you're a failure. And that's a true story. I have had anxiety attacks feeling like my life is a failure. I know what it feels like to fall into depression, because you see everybody else's highlight reel. And even though we say it all the time, it's like, man, like, am I the only one catching L's out here? Like, I'm out here really trying, and your girl is catching L after L after L. And it's just like, everybody else is just in an elevation season. I've been praying and faithing and believing it's going to happen. And now I'm on the bathroom floor crying after I just say congrats, because I feel overlooked. I feel forgotten. So it's like, do what you got to do for your mental health, but don't feel like you're alone. Don't feel bad for muting somebody or keeping a little distance or whatever. But ultimately, fight the spiritual battle, because it is spiritual. It is a form of spiritual warfare. So seek God, speak God's affirmations over you, read the word, find some scriptures that affirm you, that speak that Jesus, God did not give you a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. Like I said, you're the head and not the tail. You are more precious than rubies. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. God has plans for you to prosper and not to fail. So find those encouraging, affirming scriptures, put them somewhere. Like, you can write them on note cards. You can put them on your phone, on your desktop, on your tablet, in your car, in your bathroom mirror, whatever. Like someplace where you're going to see it often so you can read it until you start to believe it. You could say it until you start to believe it. Sometimes you got to say that thing where you don't even feel it. Like you're saying, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, but you're struggling with your self-image and your self-esteem, but you're saying it until it gets to the point where you really believe it. It hit me the other day that there were some strongholds I had in my life that took me years to get to a point to get over it. It took me years to get to a point where I truly believe certain things that God said about me, but now I'm there. And it just happens. Like you don't even, when you're seeking God, it literally just happens. You look up and you're like, wow, like I'm healed in this area, because healing is a journey. It's like, it keeps going, so you realize like, wow, like I'm really healed in this area. I didn't even realize that, I didn't even realize it. But when you seek God, it helps. You got to seek God, y'all, because like the Bible says, the enemy roams around like a lion looking to devour. He's coming to kill, steal, and destroy. And it starts in the mind. It starts in the mind. He wants to steal your joy. He wants to steal your peace. He wants to steal your love. He wants to steal all of these things because it's going to manifest in your actions. It starts in the mind. It comes out outwardly from the mind. So take those negative thoughts captive. Stay at the foot of Christ. You gotta fight, y'all. This is a battlefield. It's a fight. So you can't be cute with this thing sometimes. Sometimes you got to get in your prayer closet and go in, cry it out, lay out on the therapist's couch, let it out, have the tough, ugly conversations with your friends so you can keep those friendships. Do not get into a habit of just cutting people off and distancing yourself, at least without valid reason, like talk it out, approach them, be honest, be authentic, be vulnerable, because that's also going to bring you guys closer together as friends as well. So do the hard work. Make sure that you are guarding yourself. Make sure that you are, guarding your mind, your ear gates, your eye gates, because all of that matters. And trust God in this timing, trust him in his timing, because if something is not happening when you thought it should happen, there's a reason for that. I don't know what the reason is now. Like I said, I'm not going to get on here and start saying, oh, this is the reason, that's the reason. I don't know, but I know that God's timing is perfect. And when that relationship, because we're specifically talking about love in this case, when that relationship comes, that marriage comes, you're gonna be like, man, like I cherished my single season. Like that was worth it, because I didn't know I would be thrown into motherhood 2.5 months after I thought I'd never be a mother. And now I look back and I'm like, dang, like I miss the days when I can spend my money just on me, and I love my son. Like that's my boo-boo right there. That's my little peanut, everything, all the hardships and everything that come with motherhood, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I love it, and I go through a lot being a single mom, and it is an absentee situation. I'll share that story soon. But I go through a lot, but I love it. It's like so hard to describe. It's like the hardest job you'll ever love. Like that's what I could describe motherhood. But I look back and I'm like, I'm so glad I had years of independence. I'm so glad that I had the time to live on my own and just spoil myself and do what I want to do when I want to do it, and not have to consider how my actions affect someone else, and just really live my life, splurge, enjoy myself, live my young independent life. I'm glad I had those years, because I'll never get those particular years back. And so now that I'm in motherhood, like I say, I've had all of those times, I've done all of those things, and it was great. But yes, sis, if you're feeling a little jealous, seek Christ, pray, surrender, be honest with him. And you don't have to have no picture perfect prayer. I get gritty in my prayers with God. I'll be like, God, I'm feeling some type of way today. Like, what are you doing? Did you forget about me? Like, because at the end of the day, he's my father. But I might go into the prayer that way, but I come out like, you know what, God, I trust you. And I'm sorry for going off like that. But, I just had to get it off my chest. And I leave so empowered. I leave so uplifted. And I start to believe those things that he said about me. So seek Christ, lean on his word, fight this spiritual battle, y'all. I know it hurts to hope, because that's something else we don't talk about. It hurts to hope. The Bible says hope deferred makes the heart grow sick. And it's facts. When you keep hoping for something, it's cute to say, keep hoping, keep faith alive. But when you've been waiting for years 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years sometimes for something. It ain't so cute to hope anymore. It ain't so cute to hope anymore. It starts to hurt for real, So acknowledge those things. Take it to Christ. He's the best friend you could ever have. He will never disappoint you. He loves you in a way that no human could ever love you. And only he can give you that unlimited everlasting joy and peace. And joy and peace doesn't mean you won't have your bad days, y'all. You'll have your days where you feel less than. You'll have your days where you compare. I'm saying all this and I struggle with that. Just yesterday, I was feeling some type of way about being single and not having a Valentine's date for Tuesday. By the time y'all hear this, Valentine's Day will be in the past, but I was feeling some type of way. It's like last year I was living my best life. I had a Valentine's Day date, and the year before. Like, what is going on? It really just hit me like a ton of bricks. But, I don't try to live in a delirious mindset. Like, acknowledge your truth. Sometimes we feel as Christians that we just have to always be upbeat and like, woo, I'm never upset. No, I'm upset. I'm tight right now. It's okay. Like, I know I'm about to, I know God is good. I know all of that. But right now I need to get it off my chest. And then I can really get to the true joy. I can get back to it. I should say, get back to the true joy. But joy is not conditional. Even if you feel some type of way, joy is underneath that saying, you know what? I know God still got me though. Like, I'm feeling down right now, but I know I'm still in Jesus's arms. I know God still got me. Happiness is conditional. That comes and goes. Like, that's the surface level feeling. That's conditional. But that joy, I've gone through some dark days and I still knew God has me. I might not feel him right now. I might feel like I'm forgotten, but I know he has me. It's just me and my flesh feeling some type of way. So, don't feel like you're alone. We've all been there in one way or the other, whether jealousy has come out in comparison, arrogance, self-pity, whatever the case may be. There's other ways that could come out that I might dive into later in another episode. But, you're not alone. Take those thoughts captive and run to Christ and have the honest conversations with your friends. So just know that God loves you. I love you, sis. And keep your head up as best as you can. But if you got to cry, if you got to scream in your prayer closet, do that. But God has not forgotten you, and he loves you unconditionally and infinitely, and that will never change. There's nothing you can do to change that. So love you, sis. I will see you on the next episode. Don't forget again to follow and subscribe to For My Sisters podcast with Delle on any platform of choice that you prefer, and subscribe to the YouTube channel Daily Delle if you want to see me in these conversations. So until next time, sis, be safe, love you, and I'll talk to you later. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of For My Sisters with Delle podcast. Don't forget to keep the conversation going and use the hashtag #ForMySistersPod on social media so I can see you and show you some love. If there are any topics you'd like me to discuss on the podcast, be sure to email formysisterspodcast@gmail.com. I'll see you on the next episode. Love you. Bye.